This is the Four Wheel Parts Down and Dirty Show Off-Road Edition, powered by Polaris RZR. We're taking it back to the roots, getting dirty and covering all things off-road, because pavement, well, that's for it's gloves off, in your face, on the edge, and the way off-road should be. We're your definitive source for all things dirt.
4WP is more than a store. We're truck and Jeep experts and have been for over 50 years. From wheel and tire upgrades to full custom builds, 4WP has you covered. Whether you want to order the best parts online or shop in store, do the work yourself, or get it done by a pro, all roads lead to 4WP. Do your rig right. Shop online or find your store at 4WP.com.
And welcome to another installment of the Four Wheel Parts Down and Dirty Show Off-Road Edition, powered by Polaris RZR. Jim Beaver here, your host. I guess, what are we, episode number 4. Hopefully, if you guys missed it, man, we had an amazing podcast last week. Good friend of mine, Ryan Arciero, telling a story. I've had so many people reach out since that aired going, man, I had no freaking clue that Ryan did all that and accomplished all that. You know, the guy, legit talent. He's a badass, man. And, you want to talk off-road and guys that have done a little bit of everything. And Ryan Arciero, definitely that future Hall of Famer in my book, and it was fun to be able to catch up with him and spend, I think it was like an hour and 20 minutes we talked just on the sport of off-road and things like that. So if you're just joining me for the first time, if you've listened to my national show, welcome. This one's a little bit different, going back to the roots, just doing some hardcore desert racing, short course, overlanding, all things off-road, recreational, UTV, you name it. We're going to cover it on this show. If it ain't the dirt, then we're not going to have much to do with it, though. This is all about the dirt. You want that other stuff? Go and hit up my national show. Same feed, same RSS feed. Subscribe to iTunes, all that good stuff. Also got my other show, Project Action, as well. And hit up downanddirtyshow.com for all the latest in news and, from the dirt and the world of motorsports. Also, Four Wheel Parts, they've got The Dirt, as they call it, all kinds of off-road news and content there, too. So just killing it with the content. If you're an off-road fan, man, this is a good time to be an off-road fan. I know there's a thread going on in Race Desert, and they're talking about talking about basically the industry and, we want this guy to host this. And, I don't like the way this show was voiced. And, and it's just kind of give and take, and everybody's got their favorites. And I said, look, man, I've been around this industry a long time. No joke. And, I can remember 20 years ago, I hate to age myself, but I can remember 20 years ago when we didn't have options. Like, I remember at one point, I can't remember, I think it was Ryan Arciero, coincidentally. He was on the Wind Tunnel with Dave Despain, right? And they gave him like 10 minutes on Wind Tunnel. And, it was the biggest freaking deal because it's like, oh, my gosh, we got an off-road guy on Wind Tunnel. Literally, everybody dropped everything. We used to watch every single NASCAR race just because Robbie Gordon may mention the Baja 1000 or something like that. Just those words on TV was a big deal. It was like we sat around, and this was like dial-up internet times. You'd sit there and wait 30 minutes to watch a 15-second off-road clip that was grainy as hell, and you could hardly even tell what the hell was in the clip, Now we're to the point where we've got TV shows, we've got YouTube broadcasts, Facebook Lives, we got podcasts, radio shows, all this crazy media being built around off-road with all these personalities, me being one of them, but there's some other amazing personalities in the sport. And we're lucky we live in a time where, and if you're just new to the industry, we've got rad content, be passionate. If you're listening to this show, hopefully you like me. If not, maybe you're one of those people that's just going to bitch about me on the internet, whatever. But at least you guys have a choice. There was a time in this industry we didn't have a choice, man. Whatever it was out there, that was just what we were stuck with, and it was ride or die. Now, at least you have a choice of what content within off-road you want to consume. Infinite amounts of websites covering the events, the sport, recreational, desert, UTVs. We haven't even got into UTVs, talking about that quite yet on the show. I guess we did at the UTV World Championship, but, with Joey D a bit. But, it's just It's madness how much rad stuff is available, for fans of the sport of off-road or the people in it now. And I just think it's cool that we have choices, because there was a point in time we didn't have choices. And so be thankful we've got choices. So, yeah, this is a big week for this show. We've got my good friend Marty Fiolka. He is going to be my guest today. Obviously, we got Norra Mexican 1000 coming up. That amazing, we call it a vintage race, but there's some modern race vehicles that race down there. That's coming up. I guess within the week. We've got, we've got some Lucas stuff on the horizon down south of the border. Then even further down the road, we got the Baja 500. We got Best of the Desert, Silver State coming up. We got, Ultra 4 racing in San Felipe. Man, we got a lot of off-road stuff. We just had Easter Jeep Safari down there in Moab. I know there's some, we got the Midwest Short Course League from Lucas Oil. It's getting ready to fire up here in June. Man, it's like off-road is finally hitting the fever pitch, man. It's like events, like we said, even the recreational stuff like Easter Jeep Safari going off. There's just a lot of stuff. I know we got Rally on the Rocks, I believe, in May. There at Moab as well. So just a ton of rad shit going on. So yes, we got a lot to talk about. I think one of the big breaking news coming out of off-road, I talked about it on the national show. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on it here, but the Dakar Rally, obviously originally it was Paris to Dakar. They started in Europe and then floated everything across the Mediterranean, finished the rally in Africa. Things just got kind of too violent, too crazy. They weren't stable. So they had to make a choice, and they decided to move it to South America. I think it's, give or take, been right around a decade it's been in South America. And it's been phenomenal down there. I think the people embraced it. It's been wonderful in South America. By and large, everybody that talks about it just stoked, right? So now ASO and Dakar, ASO that puts on the Dakar Rally, they decided, yeah, we're going to make a change here. They decided to go to Saudi Arabia of all places, right? Just so you guys know, I mean, we all know what the reason why nobody would want to take an event to Saudi Arabia. It's because of the money. It was a cash grab by the ASO and Dakar Rally, and I know from, just from what I know, WWE wrestling, I'm a fan of wrestling. We cover that on Project Action. We've talked about it before. My good friend Natalie Eva Marie, former pro wrestler. So they went to Saudi Arabia. I mean, they got paid 9 figures. We're talking hundreds of millions of dollars to go and put on a wrestling pay-per-view in Saudi Arabia. It's to the point where it's big enough that The Undertaker, and even if you're not a wrestling fan, you know who the hell The Undertaker is. He comes out of retirement every year because they pay him millions of dollars to make an appearance and wrestle one match. Like, it's that they have that kind of FU money in Saudi Arabia, right? So, I know why they were doing that. My biggest problem with this is and it comes out today, but Saudi Arabia, they may be quote unquote our friends. They're not our friends. They're a violent extremist country. They have just infinite human rights issues. Their rights against women. I mean, women are treated as second-class citizens, property of men. It's just, the rights abuses against women and women's rights are just completely crazy. And, and then it comes out today, and we've heard about all these executions in the past and things like that. It comes out today as, on the 25th of this month. If you're listening to this today, it's the 24th. If you're listening tomorrow, it may already be out. ASO is making these big announcements about Saudi Arabia. Well, it was announced today that they just executed 37 people publicly in Saudi Arabia. Like, is this the country that we want to ride or die with? Is this the country we're going to take one of motorsport's premier global events? Literally, you have, Le Mans, you have Monaco GP, you have the Indy 500, you have the Dakar Rally. I mean, we've got a handful of events that are premier global events, right? That the world's eyes are on. Dakar Rally, absolutely one of them. For 2 weeks, they have the motorsports world's attention because nothing is happening in January. Dakar Rally is it. You've got the factory teams. You have the biggest names in all of racing that want to go and participate in the Dakar Rally. And we're going to ride or die with Saudi Arabia. We are going to take this event event that is a face globally of motorsport in the month of January, and arguably for off-road, and we're going to take it to a country that executes 37 people, hates women, and has multiple human rights issues. Like, this just doesn't set well with me. We can't do this. And I say we, motorsports collectively, off-road fans, we can't stand for it. You know, we have to voice our concerns, and that's why I'm doing this on my podcast and on my national radio show. It's not right. It's not a good thing. And I'm not saying anything bad about Saudi Arabia. It's actually a country, there's some really rad places I would like to visit, but I won't do it until some of this stuff is alleviated. I mean, you know, how does a woman even go to that country? You have to have like an armed security guard. You have to be full covered. Like, it's crazy. You know, how about Laia Sanz and all these amazing female competitors in the Dakar Rally? Obviously, they say, oh, yeah, we're going to embrace them. What, are they going to have like a complete security team? Are they going to have to go with, complete faces covered all the time? Like, how is this actually going to work? And obviously, they're going to spin things. You've got, the Dakar Rally Facebook page, and I know, there was a lot of negative comments, and then there was, a lot of positive comments. Well, I started doing my research. You realize all the positive comments came from people that live in Saudi Arabia. And let's face it, if you look through them, they're all men. Well, obviously the people in Saudi Arabia are going to be stoked on this. The rest of the world isn't. But I found it interesting. There was no women comments, right? Well, are women actually, really able to get on the internet much in Saudi Arabia and participate in Facebook discussions? Probably not. There's probably a good reason why no female Saudi Arabian citizens were actually commenting on the Dakar Rally's post. So I'm just saying this is all wrong. And then it comes out today that 37 people were executed in Saudi Arabia. I'm anxious to see this news that comes out about Saudi Arabia and the Dakar Rally this week. I think the world's eyes are watching it. But with the other news that's happening with the executions and everything else, like, I just don't think that Saudi Arabia is a place that we want to hold one of the world's premier global motorsport events. It's just not sitting right with me. I'm sorry. But that being said, we do have an amazing guest, an amazing show today. We've got my good friend Marty Fiolka, who is going to be on the line here. We're going to be talking about Norra Mexican 1000. We're going to be talking a little bit about Crandon. We're going to have him on again to talk about Crandon. This is more of a Norra Mexican 1000 episode, but we also talk about just the current state of off-road. He does some amazing stuff with Racer Magazine. He's an off-road Hall of Famer. We talk about the technology in off-road cars today in both Ultra 4s and trophy trucks. It's just, and what the future holds and some of this young up-and-coming talent we've seen. I mean, Marty's been around for a long time. He's one of the OGs that tried to bridge the gap between IndyCar and off-road and bring those drivers over into our sport. Just an amazing ambassador for the sport. I'm stoked to have him on to talk about the Norra Mexican 1000 that's coming up here next week. So, Marty Fiolka, my guest. Before we get to him, though, do have to make mention, you'll hear it during the break, but my good friends at My Medic, yes, they have first aid kits, something for everybody, whether you're an action sports, guy, if you're an off-road racer, if you're a boater, if you're a snowboarder, if you're a dirt bike rider, if you're a hunter, a hiker, an outdoorsman, a fisherman, whatever you are, they've got a first aid kit for you. These things are tailor-made. These things are rock solid. They are rad as hell. And, it's not one that actually can, just fix a cut. We're talking about first aid kits that can save a life. They are that good, and they went in and got in touch with some of the best people in these specific industries. Tailor-made these first aid kits just for your particular activities. Check them out, mymedic.com, and use the coupon code JimBeaver, and it's going to get you 15% off one of these kits. So coupon code JimBeaver for 15% off. All right, we are going to roll right into this amazing interview with my good friend Marty Fiolka. You want extreme performance, reliability, and the most fun you can have on four wheels? The Polaris RZR brings it to you. But you don't need to take my word for it. You can take theirs.
I'm Tanner Faust, and I choose the Polaris RZR because it's the most fun you can have with a steering wheel.
What's up? I'm Ronnie Renner, and I choose Polaris RZR because it's the sickest, most reliable side-by-side on the planet.
What's up, everybody? Heavy D from Diesel Brothers. Listen, I'm on Team RZR because it's hands down the best piece of machinery on the planet.
I'm RJ Anderson, and I choose Polaris RZR because it's the most fun, most capable machine.
Action sports stars, TV personalities, and some of the best race car drivers in the world all choose Polaris RZR because it's the ultimate combination of power, suspension, agility, and fun. Find out more information on the web at PolarisRZR.com or follow at Polaris RZR on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and use the hashtag RazorLife to share your story. When looking for a new wheel for your off-road vehicle, car, truck, or UTV, the choice is easy. You choose what the pros use. Rob McCachran, Keegan Kincaid, and myself, Jim Beaver, all exclusively use Vision Wheel, whether we're dominating Baja, taking the cup at Crandon, or shredding UTVs. Vision Wheel's trend-setting designs and durability will set you apart from the competition and your friends. Check out VisionWheel.com or at Vision Wheel on social media to learn more. Anywhere is possible. It's more than just a slogan. Anywhere is possible with General Tire's wide variety of tires for whatever it is that you drive. Whether you're looking for off-road capability balanced with impressive on-road performance or ultra-high performance offering all-season traction designed with a driving enthusiast in mind, General Tire has what you need to get where you're going. General Tire, providing anywhere is possible with a Down and Dirty radio show since 2012. Do you race or are you a weekend warrior? Have you checked on the date on your helmet recently? Don't get caught off guard by using an outdated helmet. Impact Racing, the leader in motorsport safety, has new SA 2015 helmets to fit your budget. Whether you're looking for a helmet with a full carbon fiber shell to take you to victory at the Indy 500 or just looking for some helmets for a weekend at Glamis, Impact Racing has a helmet for you. Find out more information at impactraceproducts.com or on Facebook at Impact Safety. Hey, this is Jim Beaver, host of the Down and Dirty Radio Show. Getting down and dirty on the racetrack is all fun and games until it's time to get the dirt off. I know it all too well, which is why I've partnered with MotoShield Pro, the leaders in nanotechnology solutions on the racetrack and in off-road to combat mud and dirt buildup on my vehicles. MotoShield Pro keeps us from taking unnecessary damage and spending extra energy on cleaning. No matter the weather or the surface, having proper protection on all my vehicles saves me plenty of reprep time in a sport where every second counts. Prep your vehicle like a pro. Learn more at MotoShieldPro.com.
Life is all about sound. The sound of sports. The sound of the racetrack. And the sound of your vehicle. Don't drive around listening to this. Drive around listening to the sound of performance. Gibson Performance. Gibson Performance Exhaust is the company who can turn this into this. Remember that life is all about sound, and Gibson Exhaust is the sound of performance. Check out your next catback exhaust system, headers, muffler, or UTV exhaust at GibsonPerformance.com and get more power and more sound.
Looking to have some fun on four wheels? Dirtfish Rally School has you covered. Packing as much adrenaline and adventure as you can handle into high-performance all-wheel drive and rear-wheel drive Subaru rally cars is where the fun begins at Dirtfish. Just 30 minutes outside of Seattle and Snoqualmie, you'll get a chance to train up to 3 full days with some of the country's best instructors and be put through the high-octane rush of rally on mud, dirt, and tarmac. Get started today and call 425-888-7715 or visit us online at dirtfish.com and use code 911 for a 15% discount.
Oh, man, that was a hell of a ride. Go check out MyMedic.com for the best first aid kits on the planet and save 15% with discount code Jim Beaver. Again, MyMedic.com, discount code Jim Beaver, and save 15%. It's cheaper than a funeral.
All right, I'd like to welcome my guests this week to the Four Wheel Parts Down and Dirty Show Off-Road Edition, powered by Polaris RZR. My good friend Marty Fiolka, who I guess man of many hats would be an understatement, Marty. I don't know. This week we're wearing the Norra hat, but I know any given day, any given hour, you tend to swap hats pretty frequently.
I do, Jimmy, nice to talk to you again. Yeah, it's one of those careers where it's all off-road now. All off-road motorsports, and there's a lot to do, and we're working hard to promote some events and kind of jump back into the Norra family here a little while ago, and looking forward to just a great upcoming Yokohama Tire Norra Mexican 1000. It's gonna be fun. It's gonna be the 10th running of the event, and I think there's a lot of people super excited about it. So.
Yeah, and this is one of those events, Norra, I always like, and mainly because we get a lot of people in the industry that, that have been in the industry for a long time, and sometimes they step away with families or running their businesses or whatever. But this is like the one event a year. I would say this, and Crandon's probably another one, but it draws them back in. You get these guys that are legends of the sport, and they still they're kind of up to date on things, but they're just not real active. But this is the event where everybody wants to go. I mean, it's the can't miss. You go down there, and you get guys coming out of retirement to go and have fun. Like, to me, there's just something magical about the Norra 1000.
Yeah, you're right, Jimmy. There is. I mean, look, I want to say this for guys like me that have raced a long time, that can't really get up to gearing up for a big car and a fast car for something like the Baja 1000. This has solved that issue for a lot of us, and a lot of us go once a year. We get our old race cars back out because it is a real vintage type vibe, and as you know, it's kind of where vintage off-road racing kind of started 10 years ago now. And, it's just a great way to go to Baja. It's a great way to spend 5 days with your buddies, go race a little bit, have a barbecue at the end of the day and some beers. And, it's just the whole vibe is completely different. It's all about having fun. It's all about the history of the sport. And, yeah, there were so many guys coming out of the retirement, and so many crossover guys this year, too. I mean, and a lot of them, and as you know, you're involved with Polaris quite a bit. A lot of them are involved with the UTV categories, which is growing at Norra. And, this year we've got guys like Don Prudhomme coming back, racing with P.J. Jones' son, Jagger. And we've got Tanner Faust coming. We got Greg Tracy coming. We've got some real crossover guys coming over to do the race. And it's going to be a lot of fun. I mean, they love it. Everybody who's done it really has never said anything negative about it at all. It's just a matter of them trying to get back. And, we realize it's a long commitment of time, but it's also we work really hard to make the event worth the yearly trip down from Ensenada to San Jose del Cabo.
Well, and I think this event, too, that, obviously, you brought it back. It allows all these vintage race cars, the crossover drivers, just that type of event. But one thing I really like about Norra is I feel like it's actually helped preserve some of the history of our sport, because now you and I both know the vintage cars for the longest time, they sat in garages, they were sitting out, getting rained on, rust buckets. Now there's like a legitimate full-on search for these old iconic vehicles, and people are wanting to restore them just so they can go and run Norra. And I feel like, there's a whole era there that I think, honestly, in another 5-10 years would have been lost. Just cars rotted away and things like that. And I feel like just because this event came back, now we're seeing these cars completely gone through, redone, and now they're racing. And I feel like Norra itself has actually helped preserve just the history by, everybody bringing these cars back, if that makes any sense, Marty.
Completely. I mean, one of the big mistakes I made is not going and finding the race cars I really wanted before this all started, right? Because
right?
Now they have value. We have, though. I mean, we found our old single-seater, several years ago on Craigslist and restored it, and we found a brand new Cheneth 1989 DR2 car. There's only 30 of them made, and we found a brand new car from the original owner that had never been built. So we have that car we're finishing too. But you're right, Jimmy. The historic thing is great. The cars were just kind of rotting, and people are finding a piece of their youth. We got guys restoring race cars all the time. I mean, the Wilson team, out of Long Beach, those guys found their old Class 10 car down in Australia this year and restored it. And, the Lynn Cheneth has got, I think, 5 cars entered in the race this year with various cars that they're restoring and finding. And, vintage racing around the world is a big deal.
Yeah.
It's a big deal. It's a big money program for, cars of sports cars especially. And you see that at places like, Laguna Seca at the Rennsport Reunion or the Monterey Historics every year. And, there's no reason off-road shouldn't have had it. And now, but, race cars are fine, but they're not really, off-road cars aren't necessarily at a level of a, Porsche 917 worth $20 million, but there's a place to use them now, and there's a place to enjoy them, and, guys are restoring them perfectly, or they're kind of resto-modding them a little bit to be a little better than they used to be. But, the terrain on Baja is different than it used to be too. So, but I think nobody really has they're not that critical on originality necessarily, but it's certainly the spirit of what used to be. And there's so many great cars that have been restored now, from super expensive ones like the BFG Blazer that Cam Terrier did a couple of years ago, all the way down to guys finding their old 1600 cars and, again, finding a piece of their past, and they're all really enjoying it.
Yeah. And one thing I think is going to be really interesting about Norra, I would say in the coming, I'd say 5, 6, 7, 8 years, is that we've got some of these, trophy trucks that were the original trophy trucks, and actually you hate to say the one that Mark Post owns, but, but, I think we're going to start seeing these trucks that, you know what I mean? I think people still actually remember, you know what I mean? I'm not talking in distant history. I mean, like things that were actually in the internet age that you saw pictures and maybe raw video clips in the 90s and things like that of, and those are now going to be quote unquote, 20 plus years old. I would consider them vintage. So I think it's going to be really interesting in the next, I would say 5, 6, 7 years of Norra, just to see some of these iconic, Class 1 and trophy trucks that maybe we don't really think are quite so historic, but now they actually maybe are.
Yeah, I mean, I think so, and I think that we're seeing that in a couple of places. A couple of guys, for instance, restoring some old Class 1 cars. Going back to for instance, a Porsche 911 or the old Type 4s, and trophy trucks. Yeah, we've seen some of those. Guys, deciding not to, update them too much with the bigger tires and different suspensions, where they're kind of cool the way they were. I mean, they worked great back then, and I think you're right. I think that is what's going to happen, and it just overall, it's a great thing. I think that, it's what the sport didn't have. We didn't know we didn't have it back then when we started this thing. There was about, I think there were 80 entries originally. And when we did this first thing in 2010, and I don't think anybody realized, where it was going to go. I mean, I remember clearly when I was helping promote the first one, getting calls from guys like Walker Evans and Bob Gordon and Mark McMillan and, Dave Westerman, are we really going to do this? Are we really restoring old cars? And I felt that I kind of put it on the line. So I think this is what's going to happen, and it did. And I think the retro vibe of this race and the inclusiveness, where everybody can come in something where there's no pre-running, you don't need race fuel. A lot of us just run PMX with an additive, so that lowers the cost for sure. And the fact that our crews get to see Baja over 5 days and not risk life and limb at the highways at night. You can chase it with one truck and trailer if you want to. And that all changed how we perceive going and doing this stuff. And I think that's what's kept it really fresh and fun, is that it's not as much of a grind or cost-wise. And, a lot of people can't afford to run at the top levels of, a Baja 1000 per se. And, a once-a-year race is fine. In fact, Norra this year is going to have a 500-mile race in October. That's going to be super simple in the sense that it's going to be 250-mile loops in and out of Ensenada. So you can literally stay at your hotel and just go race and come back and race and come back. And, the parties, are going to be huge because that's what Norra does. And, it's hard for Norra to take the party, which it does, to 5 nights of, go in the middle of Bay of LA and set up. You haven't been there, Jimmy, but literally hospitality tents and music and bars and, all kinds of stuff that goes on every night that makes it really fun. When you cross the finish line, they hand you a cold beer and a shot of tequila, and it's the enjoyment starts, and hopefully everybody gets in before dark and everybody has a great time. So that's all part of the formula of why this event works.
Yeah, I know, and I think it was you that coined the term happiest race on earth, right? And I think it's anybody that goes down there, they always walk away with a smile. I've been fortunate. I think I talked with Sal Fish right after he went and did the race with Jim Riley, and and Sal, even you want to talk about somebody that knows every inch of Baja, it's Sal Fish, but even he came away going, man, I saw stuff I'd never seen before,
Yeah, well, Sal's story is interesting because it's going to be his 80th birthday here coming up, and he is actually our Grand Marshal next week at Norra, and we're going to be celebrating, like I said, his 80th birthday. And what's cool about him is, he started SCORE, yes, with Mickey Thompson, but he did race at Norra in 1969 and 70 as part of, Hot Rod Magazine and Carcraft Magazine. So he has a history down there too, and he's going to be racing a car that is owned by my friend Peter Lang, who has the old Team McPherson Mini Mac truck, Little Mac it's called actually, and it was a factory Chevy truck that they've restored now. Again, Peter had other cars, but he felt the only way to be cool at Norra is to have a vintage car, so he bought this one, and Sal's going to be doing some driving next week, and we're going to be there capturing it on film and having a great time. So yeah, the Sal Fish aspect of that is correct too. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's it's one of those. I know as soon as this event's over, I'm gonna have to give Sal a ring and see if we can do another interview with him, because I always love catching up with that guy. And that's one thing, you never know how retirement's going to treat people. And you and I would be. It's safe to say that I think Sal Fish is enjoying his life right now, Marty.
Sal, I talk to Sal probably once a week or so, and Sal is definitely enjoying his life. He's one of those guys that worked hard. I mean, he was involved with every aspect of score, did all the course marking. I think he was almost a one-man band when it came to most things with score, unlike kind of today where they have more staffing and it's kind of different. But, he really enjoys his life. But he's really looking forward to this. I mean, he's super excited about it. And I can't imagine him having a better 80th birthday party than, when we finish. We have a great party down that's down at the ocean there in San Jose del Cabo, and it's a South Point sponsored event, and I think we had 1,300 to 1,400 people there last year at the awards, and fireworks, and like it's right on the beach and fully catered, and it's just a great awards. It's the nicest awards probably in the sport, and we're going to be able to celebrate Sal's birthday then, and his wife Barbara's coming down, and we're just going to have a great time. It's all part of what makes that race so special, because it's just accessible, and people don't leave town right away because they're all the way down in San Jose. So the party's packed, and the bars are packed. Everybody's having a good time.
And I think this is one of those special events, because it brings a lot of these guys, and Crandon being the other one, back together, and it's like, I know, my dad going back to Crandon last year, and certain events he goes to, and he gets to see the guys he competed against in the 80s, and it's, it's only once or twice a year everybody kind of gets together and talks old war stories and things like that. And I think Norra has become one of those events, and I think, everybody just looks forward to it, because it's like an old family reunion,
Oh, it's totally a family reunion. I mean, there are just so many people that are there. Part of it, even guys who are coming back down to race again, like with the Chenna program. I mean, it's Mike Lund and it's Mariah Thomas. I understand Casey Mears is driving one of the cars this year. They're racing with the old Ivan Stewart, Bill Horenko, Chenna's Wedge. Bill recently passed away, unfortunately, but they're going to do that in tribute to him. There's just a lot of racing going on. A lot of guys down there who, again, they may not all be driving, but they're down there just enjoying it, or they're coming to our, next Saturday will be our big Bill Steen vintage roundup, where we literally have all the cars lined up and all on display, all the vintage cars, and people just come down and hang out and see that, because that's an event unto itself. So it's fun to be in Ensenada for this, and it's fun to kind of be around all those great, historic people who just are part of the sport and have made it great for so many years.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And it's one of those too where, obviously, guys get to race things they hadn't raced in a while and things like that. But I think, one of the bigger things is even from a driver but a crew standpoint, I think with this, you go down and you race the Baja 500 or the Baja 1000. I mean, it's a high stress pressure cooker of a race, and like you said, guys are driving at night. I mean, drivers are taking risks. It's just, it's just a pressure cooker. But something like Norra, I think people in the off-road industry and teams and crews and things like that, they can enter the race. The teams can go and you can do it on a skeleton crew, but I think it's enjoyable. People get to really enjoy Baja. And one thing I love the 500, I love the 1000, but I feel like, a lot of times you're not actually enjoying Baja because you're there and you're on a mission, and I feel like Norra, you're there to race, but I think there's more to it, and you really get to enjoy Baja that you don't really get to when you're running the 500 or the 1000.
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole thing. And yeah, it is a race. I mean, look, people, anytime you put on a helmet and a driving suit and get behind the wheel, there's going to be a race that breaks out. I mean, the competition is fun. Winning is not necessarily emphasized. Having a good time is, which is a different kind of way of looking at things, but it works. And you're right that is the secret. And you're right. I think, Jimmy, that what the sport needed was exactly what they provide. Right. It's just a way to enjoy Baja. And what I like best are my team members come down on our Rennsport team, and they come to Baja once a year, and they really enjoy the 5-day trip down Baja and stopping in, San Felipe and Bay of LA, Loreto, La Paz, and then San Jose. It really breaks up the race, but he lets everybody see it in the daytime, and they can enjoy it. They can stop, have tacos and a beer, and just enjoy Baja as a kind of a cruise. Yeah, we're racing still, so that's fun, but you're almost doing you're almost part of the adventure down there as well, and it makes it great for everybody who's doing it. And what's super cool is, like in our instance, and I think most instances, our wives and significant others and families fly down to San Jose. They watch the finish, and we stay in San Jose for 5-6 days in Cabo San Lucas there, and just have a good time vacation. So it's kind of a race and a vacation. And like I said, we've been doing that for 10 years, and it has no signs of slowing down at all.
No, and it's funny every year to see, here's this vintage car somebody's building for Norra. Oh, this driver's coming back. We're going to see him this year. And it's just funny every single year. It's like, it's like the snowball effect. That snowball just keeps getting a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger, and I think it's become one of those can't miss marquee events on the calendar for anybody that likes off-road every year. And, I know, and people who, aren't even, part of off-road, this is one of those events where they just want to come and participate in.
Yeah, and you mentioned something else which is unlike anything else, and we have that, in the case of, Yokohama and Method Race Wheels and Rigid and some of the other corporate partners we have. They don't just come and sponsor it; they're part of it in the sense of, like, Method built a race truck just to go race every year, and we see that, and employees down there. Rigid has, their main guy has a truck in the race. Yokohama has several cars in the race, and they bring down their activation crew, and they bring down their staff. So it's way, as you said, an industry event almost as much as it is just a separate event, because, again, it's very accessible and it's very manageable for people to say, okay, we're going to go do this, and we're going to spend a week down in Mexico, but we're going to race it too and have some fun. And it's hard not to. When you get down there, it's very hard right? not to get swept up in it and want your old race car back, or want an old race car. A little 1600 car, a class 5 car, a class 11 bug, whatever it is. I mean, we're down there racing it, and there's a place for it. And the other thing that makes it work to me is the fact that the format, which is similar to a Dakar rally, where you have transit sections and you have sections that are timed, obviously, that allows us to bypass a lot of the major silt beds and a lot of the real rocky uphill stuff that people get stuck in. We do have our own sweep crews, but the point is that that's not fun. I mean, getting stuck is not fun. And, we work hard on our route books so that people don't get lost, because we really want them to have a good time racing and getting to the finish, and seeing your friends and having a beer is what's fun. So that allows that to happen, allows some of these lower class cars in terms of, lower travel, wheel travel, and tire sizes and engine sizes to actually function to work. And that's why we have, even everything up to Porsche 911 rally cars show up. It's not just the typical desert race cars that work. And that's one of the problems on the bigger races like the Baja Thousands and stuff. The old cars we used to race, the 1600 cars and those type of things, without a lot of wheel travel, a lot of horsepower. Now, it's completely a survival thing as opposed to a racing thing. It's almost changed so much, and that's what makes the Mexican 1000 so good.
Yeah, well, and it's funny you mentioned that. I think this is a pretty good segue into our next segment here. But talking about the technology and stuff and the way things have changed and what we're where we're at now. I know you obviously, we said, wear quite a few hats in the industry. Racer Magazine is one of them, and anybody that knows motorsports knows Racer. And I know a lot of people in the off-road space, maybe up until the last year or two, probably haven't paid a lot of attention to Racer, because we know there's some of these guys where if it's not in the dirt, we don't care. Guys like you and I love road racing and IndyCar and everything else that Racer covers. So I've been, a subscriber for years, but I know you've tried to kind of bridge that gap, and now we're seeing Racer with, and they've always covered off-road to an extent, but now, Marty, you've really brought, off-road to this mainstream publication. And I know, talking about racing technology, you just said, before we went on to air, you did this amazing piece with Jason Shear and with Justin Lofton. I mean, kind of tell us about, that, and then what you've got going on with Racer Magazine, because I think this is one of the biggest things I think to hit off-road in quite some time is, is this mainstream publication really embracing the sport of off-road.
Yeah, I mean, I've been a fan of Racer Magazines and a friend of that brand and those guys who do it. Paul Fanner, who started Racer Magazine, literally since it started, 27 or so years ago, when I was the director of marketing of the Russell Racing School, we were taking out full-page color ads in Racer, and they've managed to keep their quality at a super high level. They've never backed down in terms of just the way they do their magazines. Obviously, I have a magazine background, and Racer is always the standard with which we, try to hold up, even in the Dirt Sports Magazine days, the way we did some of our tech and some of our, in focus stuff that we used to do, which was, masterpiece and metal as we called it. But some of that was taken directly from Racer. And, yes, I've worked with them a little bit. Off-road is a little bit on the fringe for them, but here recently we started doing some content for them last year, and lo and behold, the numbers that we're seeing on Racer.com, which is the largest motorsports platform in North America, and it reaches all kinds of motorsports enthusiasts around the world, and obviously, motorsports enthusiasts of all kinds, Formula One, IndyCar, sports car being a majority of it. There's NASCAR stuff there too. But lo and behold, here when we started really comprehensively doing content, which started, it was really kind of started last year at the 1,000 big, and then we really went heavy into King of the Hammers, and then the Mint 400. We've done a lot of content. The numbers we're seeing are equal to IndyCar and sports car, and I think that's the catalyst now, which is kind of making the Racer brand aware of just how dynamic and big the off-road culture is. There's a lot of us that worked hard for that, to kind of raise that culture. I mean, there's no question about it. So the work that Dave Cole and his group have done, and Matt Martelli at the Mint, and we're just seeing a lot more mainstream interest in it, and as we should. But now the great part is when you go to, let's say, Racer.com, the posts I put up, whether they're editorial posts or they're coverage posts or whatever they are right next to the Formula One coverage or right next to the IndyCar coverage. So it's not buried in the back of the website. It actually it's on the front page with everything else. And that was the condition I kind of wanted when we started this thing, is it had to be treated the same way. And that, I think, is the biggest change, because now, we're seeing so many people getting it and so many companies interested in, and it's completely dispelling this notion of, off-road guys, basically, welding cars in the back of their, shop, which, was kind of there's been the stigma for a long time, right? And, we jokingly talk about being able to, roll a brand new trophy truck chassis into Gasoline Alley at Indianapolis next month, and all the mechanics will come out and be in complete awe of what, is going on. And they can't believe how far the technology in the sport has come. You're right. We did a story at the King of the Hammers with we just happened to be lucky that day. We chose to do a story with Jason Shearer and Justin Lawson, the two Fox cars. We just did a photo shoot with them because we want to do a technology piece on both the four-wheel drive versus two-wheel drive, and also some of the new shock technology that Fox has coming. And it worked out that Jason won the King of the Hammers, and Justin turned around and won the Mint 400, and we looked like geniuses. So it was a good thing, a good start to get back on the magazine side.
You know what's funny about our sport of off-road, and you and I have been in it, and we've both been fortunate to be able to cover all kinds of stuff. And I mean, I remember, you were one to bridge the gap way back in early mid-2000s when you had, the Groffs come in from IndyCar and things like that. But, you talk about Racer and off-road, doing really, really well alongside IndyCar and Formula One and things like that, and it's like here I've got, this show that kind of steamrolled, and now we're in national syndication and, in the networks, and this is stuff I don't ever talk about, but I'll talk about it with you. They called me and they said, Jimmy, we're going to give you a second weekly re-air, you know what I mean? And I'm like, really? And, that's 2 hours of national time a week. And they're like, your numbers are crazy. They're like, we're talking people in Maine and Pennsylvania and stuff like that, but they're like, the numbers on the network are so good, we need to re-air your show once a week. You know what I mean? And it's so funny that off-road, like, I don't know if it's because it's accessible to everybody. Maybe is that it, Marty? It's like everybody can take their truck and they can go out, and whether you're on the East Coast, West Coast, put it in four-wheel drive and go out and have fun. Like, I don't know what it is about our sport of off-road, but it's like, people on the outside, they love it. They just eat this up, and I don't know if it's because we're like the Wild West out here or how it's perceived, but it's just funny because, it's not only Racer, but I think it's a lot of other places. When our sport hits the mainstream, it's like, gosh, it's like a drug for people.
Well, when you do it, it is a drug anyway. But I think, you hit on something important. The reason that the sport and the lifestyle is still dynamic is because it is accessible and people can do it. As you said, people aren't necessarily looking for a passive experience anymore. That's part of life and how life has changed. But the bigger thing that we all talk about is the fact that unlike other forms of motorsports, off-road still has a big appeal to the youth. There's between trophy carts and UTVs and all those things, let's face it, the art of off-roading and the sport of off-roading and the lifestyle of off-roading is still cool to kids. And, that's something that you can't say about necessarily drag racing. You can't say about NASCAR. I think that is the biggest differentiator here. And I think, the secret sauce to what makes off-road so good is that very fact, is that it is a family thing that grandfathers and dad, everybody can do and be part of. And yeah, you can race or you can go to Glamis with a UTV, but it's still cool. Riding motorcycles is still cool. It's all that stuff is still a viable thing. We see it in the UTV industry right now because of the amazing growth and amazing sales of, Polaris razors and those type of things. And, it's brought yet another wave of enthusiasts. And just like trophy carts did, 10, 15 years ago when they started, now you got all these kids who are growing up and they're either racing in the Lucas series or they're graduates of the desert, but they never really leave. They're always part of it. And I think that's the other thing. It's a very addictive thing to do. And once you've tasted that Wild West, kind of sense of freedom out in the desert or down in Baja, it doesn't ever really leave you. I've been around motorsports my whole life, and I've seen people come and go out of sports car racing and all those things, but I've never really seen most off-road people leave off-road racing. And, I had a chance to spend some time last week with, Formula One champion Jenson Button and his crew. And, here's a guy who's, he's a Formula One champion, a Honda Formula One champion, and all he can talk about is how much he loves doing this and how this whole refreshingness of, that's not really a word, the whole, it's so refreshing for him to be able to step out like at the mid 400 and be recognized. Yeah, kind of, but it's not this crazy thing like he experiences in Europe and Japan. He loves the cars. He loves driving the cars. He loves, he loves the dynamic in driving the trophy spec that he has. And I mean, I think he's in it for a long haul. And I think, just listening to him reminds me and should remind all of us of why this is all so special.
And that's funny because you and I are fortunate that, a lot of guys in off-road never get to experience some of the motorsport and the events that we have. And I can go and I know a good portion of the IndyCar grid at this point. And I can go to Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and I'm going next month. And, and it's one of those that I can walk around, and I'm with these guys that I think, I'm like, man, these guys are the best in the world, right? And they all know me from social media and things like that and interviews, and they know that I've raced trophy trucks and stuff like that. And you walk around, Gasoline Alley there at Indy, these guys don't want to talk about the Indy 500, Marty. They don't want to talk about, Indy cars. They don't want to talk about any of that. You know what they want to talk about? Trophy trucks in Baja. That's what they want to talk about. And it's like you walk in and you're from off-road. It's like you're on their level. All right, let's talk desert racing, And it's just, and I'm sure you've experienced it, but it's funny because it's like, doesn't matter where you go. If they know you're from off-road, hey, we want to talk about that.
Yeah, it's always been the case. It was the case when I worked, at Indianapolis for I think six Indy 500s, and they, that's where the crossover stuff came from when I started Wide Open Baja with DeGrasse and Roberto Guerrero and those guys, and it transferred to a lot of that later on. Sebastian Bourdais and those guys all came through the Wide Open system and loved it. And then now there's a lot more extension than that, but they do. It is something that they all aspire to. If you talk to Alexander Rossi, apparently he wants to come back and do it again. He had a great time last year, almost had a big accident, but had a great time anyway. And, Indianapolis is a special place too. And, frankly, it's near and dear to my heart. I think that, we try to model all the promotion we do at Crandon, especially over Labor Day, very similar to how Indy does theirs. And it's a good crossover because what it is just a genuine event. And we know now that every series and every sport needs to have a couple great events to really carry the flag for the rest of the series. And I think Indianapolis has that, Crandon has that, the Baja 1000, the Mint have it, King of the Hammers has it. I think that's why you're seeing just so much activity on those, making those events just over the top, because that's what people remember, and that's what's going to bring in, new people, new spectators, new sponsors, however you want to look at it. But when you hit on a recipe like they have at Crandon for 50 years this year, you hit on a recipe like Norra has, or King of the Hammers has, that's a rare find. It's very difficult to find that that's something that's going to have some lasting impact and speak to the culture, right? And grow the culture, and all those events are. And I think that's the biggest dynamic change we're seeing now, is that, you know, we're really focusing on some big events, and I think that's going to carry the day for the next decade, frankly.
Yeah. Well, in talking about the next decade, before we let you go, because I know you're busy, you're getting ready for Norra, but, you know, two things talking about, you know, kind of the next decade and the future of off-road, and specifically, I would say desert racing, but short course kind of falls into this category as well. But, you know, there's two things I've seen, and, you know, just kind of want to get your take on both of them. One, it's, you know, with, you know, you'd mentioned earlier trophy carts and with UTVs, and, you know, I know me, it wasn't until I was, you know, my late teens when I actually got to get behind the wheel in a four-wheel vehicle, but there was no such thing as a Razor or a trophy cart or anything of the sort. You know, it was dirt bikes and quads before you got behind the wheel of an actual car, you know, and I see these kids now at 18, 19 with a decade of experience under their belt, and, you know, it's got to make me wonder, Marty, like, man, these kids at 20 years old are as good as some of us were when we were hitting 30. You know, it's like they're a decade further advanced, you know, and I mean, you know, and I think we're starting to see that with guys like R.J. Anderson, and, you know, I think he's one of the first that was a trophy cart kid to really, you know, we're seeing his full potential. But, you know, what do you think about the next decade of off-road? Because, I mean, I'm looking at this kid, Seth Quintero, who is, you know, he's 15, 16 years old. I think he just had his 16th birthday. He's won, you know, a couple of UTV World Championships. He just won the Mint 400. I mean, this kid is slaying it, and he's 16, Marty. I mean, what do you think the future with all this young, crazy talent we've got is going to be?
Well, I mean, I think the days when you and I raced, and I raced my first Baja 1000 when I was 30,
yeah.
are kind of, you know, not that they're over, but yeah, I mean, you know, those kids have grown up, and you see it in short course quite a bit too. You know, you've got these tremendous talent, Brock Hager and those guys,
yeah.
you know, who just, you know, who do that. I mean, there's all these crossover guys that are doing this. Matt Cullen, all these guys are doing such an insanely great job of building their talent early. There's access to build your talent early. I mean, I think the racing, we see it now. We're you know, in the competition, all the main classes has gotten super tight. You see it in the upper echelons and trophy trucks. You see it throughout the desert classes. You know, class 10 is super tight. 6100 you know, is super tight. So all of that is you know, really, as you say, bodes well for the future. I mean, the talent pool that's being developed now is better than it's ever been. The competition, frankly, is better than it's really ever been if you dissect it. And I think that that bodes nothing but great things for the sport in general. That's for sure.
Yeah. Well, and you know, secondly, you know, talking about the future, and you know, I know specifically in desert side of things, we've seen, you know, the technology pushed, and you know, and I know I don't, you know, and I had this conversation last week with Ryan Arciero, and I think we both agree that I don't think we're ever going to see the leaps and bounds we did in the early years of trophy truck. I think it's going to be, you know, trucks are going to get a little bit better. You know, suspension's going to get a little bit better. Shock technology, you know, steering's going to get a little bit better. Brakes are going to get a little bit better. You know, I think we're going to see small things like that, you know, and we see Bryce Menzies' truck, and I know this thing was, you know, north of a $2 million build budget for his new all-wheel drive truck. I mean, you know, what do we think about the future of the technology in off-road, Marty? Because some of the stuff you and I both know, I mean, we have world-class fabricators and, you know, and engineers. I don't even want to call them fabricators anymore. World-class engineers in the sport of desert racing, and some of these creations are just, I mean, they're insane when you unskin them.
Yeah, I mean, I saw my first real all-wheel drive truck at the King of the Hammers. Frankly, I hadn't been to a race for a while, and you know, took a look at I think it was Brett Seropis's Mason truck, and you know, the whole portal hub system that they're using in front now. That is just against anything any race car guy ever said, because it adds so much unsprung weight to the suspension. But you know, the all-wheel drive, you know, versus two-wheel drive is going to be a big conversation. I think it's going to be a battle for a while to see. I mean, there's people are definitely making sure, and what it may do is evolve into where certain courses need all-wheel drive and certain courses may need two-wheel drive to have an advantage, and guys who can afford it or can do it may have two trucks. And I think that could be a thing. I do believe that there's going to be a leap now in what Jensen Butt and I were discussing, which were, you know, the actual shock technology. I think that, you know, especially I think the guys at Fox have got some things that they're talking about with this new live valve active system, you know, which is really, you know, being tested now in some trophy trucks. But it's been, you know, it's something you can get at a Polaris dealer. Actually, they have that system, and the new Raptors have that system too, where basically you have, you know, electronic controlled sensors and valving that, when you go into a corner, the car doesn't have, because the biggest problem, as you know, in a trophy truck or any long travel cars, you have, it's way too much body roll to really handle corners very well. You're using the weight to basically make the car stick. And I think that's going to change in the next couple of years. I think that's going to be the biggest change in performance. But yeah, it's going to be, but then again, you talk about, it's not very subtle. If you look at how the qualifying times work and how, especially Bryce and his truck, how fast he's been in qualifying. I mean, there's no question that there could be advantages to that. But I think it's going to be, like anything in motorsports, it's going to evolve for sure.
Yeah. What do you think about wind tunnels and testing, and aerodynamics for trucks? Because I think for the longest time, it's kind of been one of those things we ignored. I know at one point Ashley and Smith had their their trophy truck back in Dearborn in the Ford wind tunnel, and but I think that's kind of for the longest time we've kind of ignored that. Marty, I mean, do you think at some point that's going to start coming into play?
Yeah, I mean, I think it has to, right? Because there's a whole, if you've ever driven, and you have and I have, when you get over, let's say, 130 miles an hour on a lake bed or something in a Class 1 car like I've done, or in a trophy truck like you have, it definitely changes the aero. You can feel the car starting to lift and the front nose starting to lift. And, there's really no speed limit here, so how fast can these trophy trucks eventually go? I mean, I think that you've got aero issues where the hood wants to pop up if they hit a bump and wants to blow back. Robbie Gordon's experienced that. He's had his cars in wind tunnels. I think you're right. I think aero could be the next thing, and make them a little more efficient. But the bottom line is, you're pushing a big amount of bulk in terms of the chassis and the body work. You're pushing a lot of weight. You're pushing this thing against the air, and you need a lot of horsepower, and they tend to sit up pretty high. So there's all kinds of differences. Eventually, I think that what's going to happen is now, somebody explained this to me, is that the thinking used to be that you needed a heavy chassis so that the suspension could work against the chassis, not move it so much dynamically. Now with the new, for instance, this new Fox technology that may be coming around, now you don't need to worry about the big heavy truck. You can actually go a lot lighter because the shocks work independently. So this could be the big change, is that we're going to go to wider vehicles. And this is what's great about the sport, is that it's unlimited thinking. You can do whatever you want. There's hardly any rules at all, and this allows the engineers and the people with money, like you talked about, have a $2 million trophy truck. Getting beat by a $700,000 trophy truck, let's say. But everybody can evolve and move and do, and I think that's also so that's certainly not the case in almost any other form of racing right now. It's so restricted. They're trying to find in NASCAR they're trying to control a quarter inch of shock travel, whereas here we're controlling 20 inches of shock travel, or 20, whatever it is. And I think that is what makes it so exciting for people to be involved in, because like you said, they're starting to engineer cars, and that's for guys like we talked about Jenson Button and his crew. That's exciting. That's what makes it so great. So
yeah, well, and you bring in those Formula One ideas and those guys that have been in a world class series like that, and then I think that's really Jenson's already. I'm sure his gears are turning in his head, going, all right, we can make this better. We can do this. We can do that. And I think that's what's exciting. You start bringing in those other ideas that we maybe haven't really seen in off road before, and that's really what's going to flip this industry on its lid, I think.
Yeah, I mean, you're right, and I think there's going to be, his partners in that Rocket Motorsports team. One of them is the main engineer at Singer, and which does those incredible, Porsche cars, and works with Williams Formula One, Williams to actually build those cars over in England. And when he and I talked about it, there's definitely some packaging things he could see that can be improved, and the wheels are already turning, and he's like, I love this because it's just there's no rules. We can just go ahead and do this. So I think it's a fantastic dynamic to be in, certainly considering all that's going on in the world and all that's going on in sports and all that's going on in motorsports. It's amazing to think that we were sitting there 5 years ago thinking, what's the future going to hold? And now, the whole part of this sport and this world is actually kind of not cutting edge. I'm not going to say that, but it's certainly viable and certainly dynamic and certainly blossoming, and I think that's almost impossible to say anywhere else. And I think collectively as a sport, I think we all have to take a minute, take a deep breath, and appreciate how far we've come. That's for sure.
Yeah, I definitely, I completely agree. I think that's a good spot to wrap things up. I know you and I talked. We've got a lot to talk about. I know in the next couple of weeks we'll probably have you back on. We've got some big Crandon news going to be coming up here in a bit, and so I know we've got a lot happening in off road, especially with you, Marty.
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited to share all the news we have about Crandon because there's a lot of stuff coming out for Labor Day on the 50th anniversary, which I can share with you in a couple of weeks, Jimmy, and your audience will break some news to you guys. But it's been a great few months here for us, and we're excited to share what's going on because if you're an off-road fan, you got to get to Crandon Labor Day for the 50th. It's going to be something very special.
Yeah, I've got an idea what's in the works, and I can't wait to get back there. My house on the lake is already booked, and can't wait to get there to Crandon and have some cold ones with you, Marty.
All right. Well, listen, you guys have a great time. Thanks for everything, Jimmy, and we'll talk to you after we get back from Norra.
Thanks to Marty for calling into the show this week, man. Always fun catching up with him. Just an amazing ambassador for the sport of off-road, and love having him on air anytime we can. This guy, he's an amazingly talented guy. Just his journalism, his writing. He's been a radio and TV personality in the past. Guy, he gets it. Plus, he's an off-road guy, right? Gotta love that. So thanks to Marty for calling in. Good luck to him and everybody racing the Norra Mexican 1000 this weekend. Also, don't forget, mymedic.com. Use the coupon code Jim Beaver. It'll get you 15% off. Also, Dirtfish Rally School. Yes, those guys up there in Seattle that have the amazing rally classes. Yeah, the ones that I'm a helmeted driver for, and I go up there and just slay these badass Subarus around, all-wheel drive Subarus. They also have rear-wheel drive. Anyways, use the coupon code JB Dirtfish. That'll get you 15% off those classes at Dirtfish. Yep, we got one for them too. So make sure and check them all out, man. It's good stuff. Thanks to all our amazing partners here on the show. My Medic, obviously, Polaris Razor, General Tire, 4-Wheel Parts, Vision Wheel, Gibson Exhaust, MotoShield Pro, Blue Water Resort and Casino, and Dirtfish Rally School. They all support us. So thank you guys. Make sure and hit the subscribe button over there on iTunes to the show. If you do that, leave your Twitter, Instagram at username in the body of the review. And when I see it, I will follow you back on social media. Check out Project Action as well down on dirtyshow.com. My good friends at 4WP. Check out their site, The Dirt, with all their off-road content there. And check us. I don't know. I don't know. I don't even have anything else. I'm like losing my brain here. Check out my weekly national show on Project Action, where I've got Brian Deegan this week there on Podcast One. Subscribe to that show too. I don't know. Have we gone through all the formalities? I think so. That means I'm out of here. You guys have a great week. If you're going to Norra Mexican 1000, be safe down there in Baja. Can't wait to hear the stories next week right here on the 4-Wheel Parts Down and Dirty Show Off-Road Edition, powered by Polaris Razor.
4WP is more than a store. We're truck and Jeep experts and have been for over 50 years. From wheel and tire upgrades to full custom builds, 4WP has you covered. Whether you want to order the best parts online or shop in store, do the work yourself, or get it done by a pro, all roads lead to 4WP. Do your rig right. Shop online or find your store at 4WP.com.